Hi, my name is Robert Brill. I am a fibromyalgia researcher and advocate and PhD candidate in health psychology, and this is my fibromyalgia podcast series. Today I'd like to discuss neurotransmitters in fibromyalgia. There are dozens of neurotransmitters in the body, but for the purpose of understanding chronic pain, I intend to only focus on the most significant neurotransmitters: acetylcholine, dopamine, GABA, glutamate, melatonin, norepinephrine, serotonin, and substance P. Biopsychology is one of a number of branches of psychology that deals with how neurotransmitters influence our behaviors, thoughts, and feelings, and this is also known as neuropsychology. Nerves are the starting point of pain. Nerves are where you first receive impulses and where you start to process and transmit neurotransmitters. At the end of the nerves are nociceptors, the receptors that detect pain or actual or potential tissue damage suspected to be impacted by fibromyalgia. Nociceptors are everywhere, which explains why you can have pain everywhere with an illness like fibromyalgia. Nociceptors detect pain and transmit a signal to the brain, passing through the dorsal horn in your spine on its way to your brain, where it triggers the release of neurotransmitters, which activate other nerves and send the message to the thalamus for processing, and then sending out multiple pain messages. So you can see here how it's very complex, the neurotransmitter system in pain. Multiple pain messages help to explain how we experience several types of pain and several levels of severity of pain. Everyone reacts differently, and how we react to pain is stored in our brain for future use, or a reference for future pain. In most cases, the older we get, the more pain we have experienced in our lives, and this prepares us for future pain, helps us build a tolerance to pain along the way, and thus pain becomes a normal part of life. So what was just explained describes acute pain, which is said to serve a purpose, whereas chronic pain, on the other hand, doesn't really have a purpose. With chronic pain, the nerves become triggered and they become accustomed to being in pain, causing physiological changes to the affected nerves and the surrounding areas, and then becoming chronic. In most cases, chronic pain is difficult or impossible to diagnose or pinpoint. With many chronic illnesses like fibro, this is what happens, and the nervous system becomes the source of the pain, making pain next to impossible to manage. But the primary role of neurotransmitters are to activate receptors through an excitatory or inhibitory response, to affect mood, appetite, anxiety, sleep, aggression, temperature, heart rate, fear, and many other psychological and physical events. Excitatory neurotransmitters, or exciting, these stimulate receptors, while inhibitory neurotransmitters block the receptor. Many actions can trigger the release of neurotransmitters. It's suggested that chronic stress, poor nutrition, and a fast-paced lives lead to the depletion of neurotransmitter levels. There are three primary types of neurotransmitters: amino acids, peptides, and monoamines. Amino acids include glycine, glutamate, aspartate, and GABA. Monoamines include acetylcholine, dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, histamine, and serotonin. And peptides include substance P, endorphins, oxytocin, insulin, glucagon, vasopressin, and a few more. Neurotransmitters are made primarily from amino acids, which means that they come from your diet. It's suspected that neurons communicate via chemical release. Most effective psychoactive drugs like antidepressants or narcotics like Vicodin, they affect the neurotransmitters at one level or another, altering our brain chemistry. All neurotransmitters are interconnected through a delicate system of balance. General anxiety disorder, for example, is suggested to be the result of the malfunction of several neurotransmitters in the brain, making general anxiety disorder very difficult to treat effectively. Neurotransmitters carry impulses between nerve cells, primarily dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. Some foods are known to influence the brain behavior and thus neurotransmitters that regulate behavior. Serotonin is suggested to be released from carbohydrate foods, thus making junk foods our comfort foods. You can eat these foods, serotonin is released, and then tension is reduced. Alternatively, if norepinephrine or dopamine were released from proteins, you would feel excited or alert versus relaxed, as with serotonin. Complex carbs and fatty acids like salmon and whitefish would then stimulate the release of norepinephrine and dopamine. Foods high in saturated fats like burgers and fries would lead to slow thinking and fatigue. Eating more carbs and proteins relaxes you, while eating more proteins and carbs alerts you. So fats inhibit the production of neurotransmitters. Eating simple carb foods provides a quick burst of energy and then produces fatigue and sometimes depression shortly after. In depression, heredity can be a factor, but so can the lack of exercise, poor nutrition, and the ability to relax oneself, which can affect us at the chemical level. So you can quickly see how the wrong diet can exacerbate your fibro. Beyond these attributes, our body chemistry can also be affected by our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Low levels of norepinephrine are observed in depressed people, for which relaxation can stimulate an increase of norepinephrine. Depression, anxiety, sleep issues, and sexual activity can be positively influenced by the release of endorphins, of which exercise can stimulate. So clearly, all of our neurotransmitters can be affected by many different things, both positively and negatively. When all these things cannot be managed by you, which is known as serotonin management, you can turn to medications like antidepressants to help. Permitting yourself the positive influences in life and eliminating the negative ones, like in this case eliminating catastrophic thinking, can help essentially promote wellness. If you're able to do a number of positive behaviors like exercise, good nutrition, proper needed meditation, stress control, guided imagery, talk therapy, just to name a few, these influence the production of serotonin, and you may be able to manage depression to some degree. And for most people, depression is a major factor in fibromyalgia. Dramatic events in your life, like a death or serious injury or chronic illness, have the ability to cause an increase in depression, most often only temporarily. Studies have concluded that over a period of time, neurotransmitter levels will return to normal. This period of time can be up to a few years, though, depending on the event, the person's biology, their coping skills, their support structure, and their future ability to move on. Chronic worrying can have a negative effect on neurotransmitters too. Conceptual worrying is normal, constructive worrying and is involved in reaching goals, for example, whereas reactive worrying has destructive results. When disease or illness is present, there's a disruption in the flow of neurotransmitter. Reuptake is the process of the neurotransmitter being picked up by the axon terminal that originally released it. And this is a normal process. It's the common for the way that norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin are interrupted and stopped. Reuptake involves the neurotransmitter from the synaptic cleft, and then they will not bind to their respective receptor, and they won't perform their job. Thank you.